tip 278, use this paste wax, any kind of paste wax for that matter, to wax the slides on your saw or any of your surfaces for your planer, table saw, whatever you're using. I can literally push this back and forth with one finger. Before it was a little rough, but I applied some of this paste wax beforehand, before we got started, and it makes all the difference in the world. It makes a difference in the accuracy of your cuts and how hard your saw has to work. So wax up your surfaces before you get started. So we got the front and the left side cut. Now I'm sure there's a lot of you guys out there smarter than me, so I have to label which side's which. Pro tip 174, keep going from the front. Next side I'm going to cut is the right, so that the joint orientation stays consistent. I don't want to end up cutting them on the wrong side and then having one stick up like that. That'd be trouble. We'd have to start all over again. It happens, but that'll ruin your day. Alright, so now we got finger joints cut in all 4 of our corners. We'll set up the saw for one last cut to make the groove where the bottom panel is going to slide in. Then we'll clean things up and do our final assembly. Okay, so now we'll go over to the workbench and finish cleaning it up with the palm sander. Remember, you can always take more off, can't put it back on. Alright guys, so it's been 24 hours since we sprayed our first coat of polyurethane. Now, we didn't do a lot of sanding before we did the first coat of polyurethane. A wise old man told me one time that your smoothness is in your finish, but a lot of guys will tell you that the prep is just as important. So we want to do some sanding, but the sanding, like I said earlier, if you do too much sanding or put too much pressure on your wood, it'll close down the pores, especially if you're doing stain, and then the wood won't absorb the pigment, because all stain is different colors of pigment in some sort of liquid. I don't know all the science behind it, but anyway, that's what makes stain. So we've got our first coat of polyurethane on, and what you want to do between coats is use some 4/0 steel wool. And all you're doing is you're knocking the high rough stuff off. It's going to feel like it's got little bumps or little hairs on it, and then you just lightly brush it, you know, maybe 1 or 2 strokes on each surface, and you can instantly feel a difference in the smoothness. 4/0 steel wool is pretty soft, but if you do it too much, you'll take it back down to the bare wood, and then you just gotta start all over again. So on fine pieces of furniture, you want to do this process several times. Since this is a drawer for a vanity, it's not a showpiece, it's not something that people are going to look at all the time. I'm just going to run over it a few times and then hit it with the tack cloth and go back for our second coat of polyurethane. So you notice when I was doing the steel wool, I still go with the grain of the wood. If you go cross grain, it's going to scratch it. Even though this 4/0 steel wool is super soft, it's still going to scratch it up and going to make blemishes in there that isn't consistent with your grain. So make sure you go with the grain all the time. Now I'm going to hit it with the tack cloth. Alright, now we're ready to go back for our second coat of polyurethane. And what you'll notice is I didn't put any of the edges or the sides back on this t-shirt that I have cut up, because you can't see it in the camera, but your steel wool will leave fine little particles of steel in it. And then secondly, there's going to be all the dust and everything in the high spots that you knocked off with the steel wool. So make sure that once you start running your tack cloth on there, it's basically like a cheesecloth with wax impregnated into it, and that just knocks the dust off and gets you ready for your second coat. So now our surface is clean. Now I'm going to go over to my little spray station, and we're going to put our second coat of polyurethane on. Alright, so we're over here at my paint station, finishing station. I've got a 20-inch box fan here that I put a 20 by 20 furnace filter on, one of these pleated ones, and it helps to draw the fumes and the particulates away Put it on the back side, obviously, so that it sucks everything from where you're spraying through the fan. And then we're going to go ahead and put our second coat of polyurethane on. Just using some Minwax clear satin polyurethane. Nothing fancy. Alright, we'll call that good. We'll wait 24 hours, let it dry, and then we'll be able to put the slides on and take it back over to Mom's.